Hi, it's a pleasure today for International Women's Day to be always with the kind of great Carole Fisher. Carole, it's a pleasure always for me, for the team, to be with you. And we're so excited to be able to have this conversation today because, I mean, we know that it's not only us, there's so many other women that admire you, and you're such a great example that I really want to unpick a little bit of what's behind all that kind of passion, that we admire so, so much. So thank you for being with us. Just for anybody who, doesn't know Carole, let me talk a little bit about her. Um, Carole is a first-time podcaster of the excellent podcast, The Girlfriends. So if you haven't heard it by any chance, please, please do so. But first and foremost, she's a mother and a grandmother. Um, Secondly, and we will discuss, she dated a man for 6 months who turned out to be a murderer. And after nearly 30 years, she's telling the story out to help others. Thirdly, she is a successful businesswoman in the world of palliative care, a social worker by training, and she's now a C-suite senior director with Hillsperian in Washington, D.C. And she covers all kinds of issues around social impact, from mental health to hospice care. Carole, as I said, thank you for being with us.
Oh, Pamela, it's just a privilege. I'm really humbled and happy International Women's Day. It's great to be with you. I'm sporting a little bit of a cold, so I apologize to our listeners, but I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with you today. And you're an inspiration, and your team's an inspiration. So I'm thrilled to be here. I hold you all in just high regard.
Thank you so much for that. And Carole, we've heard the podcast, and we hear you and kind of your voice um and your resilience there, but also you're kind of feisty in it. And I think, that's part of what we love. But tell us a little bit more about you. I mean, there's a lot about you that is uncovered, about your background, but tell us a little bit more of Carole. Where did she come from? Family, friends. How was that atmosphere growing up?
Yeah, well, gosh, you want to hear about me, huh?
Yes.
Where do I start? I was born and raised outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. And at different times in my life, I was raised by my mom, who was not always married, so single mom at different times. And I have one sister, a sister from a different dad, but sisters nonetheless. And yeah, when I was, gosh, a teenager, we moved to Florida and spent some time there. And my mom actually remarried. I was probably about 18 years old. She met a man and we went to Las Vegas. She went first and I shortly followed thereafter. So that's how I ended up in Las Vegas, Nevada, which really is home to me. I feel like I was born and raised in Las Vegas, even though I didn't get there till I was about 18.
It's
What
an
else can I
interesting.
tell you? Hmm.
No, no, it's an interesting one. That one that happens to me. I think where you have some of your significant years, your kind of late teens, um, beginnings of college, or kind of culture. It seems to be the place that you identify the most with.
Yeah, I agree. And, for me, I've never really lived a conventional path. So I've always done things a little different to my own tune. So when I got to Las Vegas, I had dropped out of high school. That's probably important for folks to know. I think most people think I was probably a cheerleader. I had this perfect life, but I wasn't. I dropped out of high school, went back to school, earned my GED, and then went to college. But even that wasn't conventional, Pam, because I went to many different colleges, and it took me a while to complete my degree.
I imagine you're a bit feisty
Um,
at the time at that time.
I've been called feisty before. That's probably a kind way to say about my personality. I'm a little spirited. I think I'm good at letting people know how I feel and sticking up for myself. And probably some of that is just survival skill from being raised in a broken family and making sure that my needs were met.
It's that's an interesting one because did you think that that influenced afterwards your some of your choices for partners, for friends? Like, do you think that had a direct impact? Because we see that all the time.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, today I'm sitting here at 65 years of age. And so as I was maturing as a young adult, there was this fairy tale life that you're supposed to live. I mean, I bought that hook, line, and sinker. So I was always seeking to who I should be married to, and he should be Jewish and he should be a professional and, try to conform with those norms back then. I'd like to say, gosh, today I think women have it a little differently, a little easier, but they have different challenges, of course. But yeah,
No,
yeah,
I agree, and it's generational because I would say for my generation that was also very important still, right? It was still like what you could do for yourself, but there was also like yeah, marrying and that person was a goal in your life. And I can see now that, people are not thinking of marriage as a goal. Um, it's something that if you didn't achieve, you were slightly an outcast. And now you see so many people not marrying and just, having their partners and so forth. So it's interesting for anybody, any somebody who's Gen Z that is hearing us to understand that that was a challenge in itself to overcome.
yeah, and not just to be married, but to make sure we were the caretaker. As women, I had professional goals, but I also had to make sure I was taking care of my husband and taking care of my child and taking care of the house and making sure dinner's on the table. And it's a different generation today where I think women are sharing that with their partner. I know my daughter is, and I love watching that because it's an evolution of sort. Yet there's still great challenges with that for women of all ages. We're told we have to do it all and be all, and so yeah, I it's definitely a tape that resonates with me still to this day. Yeah,
We have as women, we have it hard that way, right? Because we now really want careers and which we're good at and entitled to, but also family responsibilities. And you're right, like you can see the mold being broken every time. There's statistic here in the UK where there's a lot of pubs being closed because well men are not leaving to pubs after work because they're a bit more integrated to the household work than compared to the 70s or 60s. So yeah, it's interesting to see.
that's fascinating to me and
Yes.
great. Yeah, I love that. Men need to come home and help with and take responsibility and be a partner, an equal partner.
And I
Yeah.
think that many of them want to. It's just I think they are there's kind of a male revolution on the weight, I feel, that that needs to happen to make sure that they're also not casted in these roles. I think as women, we've moved very quickly on some of those roles, and men probably still seem very similar to, I know 80 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except for those changes that we can see, now happening. Um, Carol, I think a word that is used a lot at the moment, how some words go on hype, is resilience. You know, and it's very important because it's the way that we kind of carry through things. Um, is was there any moment where you had to kind of, I don't know, dig deep and be, resilient to become, the woman that you are today?
Excellent question, and resilience is top of mind for everybody. And when I think about resilience for me, Pamela, I think about it's like exercising a muscle. And it's not this one-time event, it's this ongoing journey um, of, you know, getting up and I ride horses. So, falling off the horse and getting back on
Yeah.
yeah, I actually have three right here in the backyard. So yeah, that's a whole other story, Pam, we can talk about too. But yeah, so
Does it help
resilient.
you with stress? Sorry, I'm jumping now. We're gonna go
Does
back
it
to
help me
resilience.
with
Does
stress?
it
You
help
want
you
to
with
talk about?
stress?
Well, we have a lot of animals, and so in addition to my home in Las Vegas, I spend time in right outside of New Orleans in Louisiana, and in order to tether me here, we built a barn, and I have a couple pet pigs and pet goats and several horses, and yeah, it's fun, and it is very, very much a stress relief. There's nothing more wonderful than to go outside and pet my pig and get on a horse, and yeah, so it's fun.
I mean, we were talking about resilience, but it's so important. I see so many women really stressed out, um, that it is important for everybody to find the something that, ensures that that's not happening to them.
Yeah. I think stress is becoming such prevalent, and we could go on and on about stress.
True.
For me, I really have to find times to decompress. And here I am sitting here with the cold. I've been traveling, I've been on the road, and of course I get myself run down. And so going back to that concept of resilience, I think it's really important to look at that as moments of time where you're really taking care of yourself and making sure that you're okay. And that's kind of where I go in my mind of practice of, you know, how do I create moments that are just for me and not having to be there for everyone else?
And Carol, I mean, there are some challenges that we know that you've had because you spoke so much about them, and they're out there, around domestic violence, but also one particular one that I want to ask is um how did you kind of handle for everybody that heard the podcast and knows a little bit more about the story, um just coming to terms that, potentially you had dated somebody who had, murdered their partner, right? From the idea of risk to just knowing that, like, how was that a particular challenge? And I would love to hear this kind of, challenges or stories around that kind of helped your build your resilience.
Well, when it comes to dating a murderer, that was a chapter that I had put out of my life. I'm really good at compartmentalizing, which I think many of us women do.
Mhm.
And I was minding my own business, and Anna Sinfeld reached out to me from Novel and asked me if I would talk with her about Bob, the gentleman who now is, thank God, in prison, and although eligible for parole, that's a whole other conversation. And I wasn't real interested in talking about him except if it would help other women, if it would make a difference. And Anna stayed true to that and did a wonderful job of putting the girlfriends together. And it's been a privilege to be the host. But I was minding my own business. And so when that chapter reappeared in my life, I really believe it had purpose. And, what was I going to do with that purpose? So I, put together a lot of resilience in my life at that point, because here I am thinking that a podcast is just heard by a couple people. And in fact, it was heard by millions of people and has been number one in 6 different countries. So a lot of people now know my story. I feel really good about that because women reach out to me, as you know, from all walks of life, from all different countries. They find me on social media and thank me. Although I did get one nasty email, but most of them are all, thanking me for being a voice and saying, my daughter had been in a domestic violence situation, or my sister needs to feel that empowerment. And, so it's been, the Girlfriends has been a great vehicle to help women and give a voice to such an important issue. And of course, I'm getting all off topic. So where were we, Pam? Yeah.
No, and no, I'm picking up on the we always tell people to speak up if they can. Speaking up, though, is a very personal process. I would like to kind of clarify that, because you have to be ready. It's your story, right? To share, and you know, you need to know if it's even safe to share a story, right? However, once people do that step, any woman goes out, tells a story around sexual assault, domestic violence. There are so many people that hear it, that identify with it. That was, I think, partially the success of, you know, of the podcast, right? Is just
Yeah.
finding so many other souls that had could understand in a way what was happening. So I think it's very important, and I think that's being, you know, part of the great work that you've done is speaking up.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think what I've learned at this stage of my life, it's really important to own our stories and to be kind to ourselves about the parts of our stories that aren't perfect. And so, it I'm one in three women. I'm one in three women that have been in a domestic violence situation, and not just with the man that murdered his wife. When I was in college, early on, I dated someone who was not happy that I was talking to another guy, and it was just purely platonic. I was on the phone. Back then, it wasn't a cell phone, it was with the cord at the end. And he told me to get off the phone. And I remember thinking, you can't tell me to get off the phone. Like, I'm in the middle of a conversation. And he got really angry at me and slapped my face, and it broke my eardrum. That's how hard I got slapped.
Oh
And,
wow.
that's a story I've never really talked about um, with my family, with my friends. And there has been a great sense of empowerment by sharing that now with you and other women privately, because one in three women have experienced domestic violence. That's a big number. And it's important that we know that we're not defined by that moment. And I think there's so much shame and guilt and uh, bad stories that I've told myself, and that I'm learning that other women do also, because we didn't speak up. And I will not allow myself to be defined by the mistakes I've made, or by the situations I've been in that aren't favorable. So whether that's dating a murderer, whether that's being slapped to a point where I had to have surgery on my eardrum, um, those situations can't define me today. And so I'm here to say that I think as we look at International Women's Day, what can we do to come together and share our story, own our story, and realize that we're not perfect.
Mm.
But that imperfection doesn't need to be the greater story of who we are.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And one of the things that comes to mind very quickly is we underestimate teenage dating violence, college dating violence.
Mhm, mhm.
I think when we think about colleges, we think a lot about sexual assault. And actually, there are a lot of dynamics of controlling and abusive relationships at college, and that might be the first significant relation for somebody. The
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, the first time that you might live out of house, for example, or that you're kind of partnering with somebody. But we've kind of undermined you know, teenage dating violence, and it's picking up, and you know, teenagers starting to kind of, you know, raise their voice also on that topic. But yeah, that's it's important to know that that has happened throughout time, right? That, you know, only because, you know, somebody's young, you know, 20 years old, he might not slap you or hit you
Mhm.
or something, right? That this is just, I don't know, older men after you've signed a certificate of marriage or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the kind of stories that I hear about today, because of the success of the girlfriends, and because I've become this face of a voice on domestic violence, that people are reaching out, sharing that, and almost really craving this feeling of connection. This, we are all girlfriends at the end of the day. And so I love the fact that your work is to support other women and give them a voice and help them feel empowered and help them with resilience.
And let's talk a little bit about that because I'm part of the fascinating story of the girlfriends. And then the reason it's fascinating is because I think many people can identify to a certain extent with having you guys became a support system, right? So I'm kind of curious on your opinion on how important it is to have a support system as a woman, um, but also be part of the support system of others, or or it's kind of a joint, but how can that really help us?
I think it's so important today that we just slow down and listen to other people. Social media, I could go off on a rant about that. I think that social media isn't necessarily our friend today because all we see are happy pictures of people, and people aren't typically posting their bad days. And so we're seduced by thinking everyone's happy and, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me, that I'm having a bad day or a bad moment, or I've made a mistake, or I'm with someone who's not serving my purpose in a relationship. And so what I know today and what I understand today is that we're stronger when we're all together, and that it's really important to listen to women and be there as a support system for one another. For me, I have an amazing group of girlfriends, and we travel together, and we spend a lot of time together, and we're there for each other. But that requires us to slow down and pick up the social cues of someone not having a good day and someone being uncomfortable talking about real life situations. A great example of that is when the girlfriends came out, those tight group of girlfriends that I have, one of them shared with me, one of my dear friends shared with me that she had been thrown out of a car, a moving vehicle when she was in college. And why did it take the girlfriends for her to share that story? Or why does it take you inviting me for International Women's Day to share about my abusive relationship in college? And so I'd like to say that we're all part of this solution together to normalize these conversations that are uncomfortable and really show up for other women and be there and be a support.
It's important. It's important as we grow up. And these people, your support systems might change throughout the years, but it's important to have that kind of solid group of people that will hear you out and that you can hear them and that you can help.
I'm a big believer that support systems definitely change, and that sometimes people have a season in our life. A relationship isn't always permanent. So when we're seeking out friendships that are consistent with where we're at today, I think that's very important.
Moving ever so slightly, because it's, International Women's Day, I'm very curious throughout this kind of whole process. How did you, get into your work as a social worker? There'll be many people with that kind of background probably hearing us. And how did that evolve for you career-wise to the point that you're at Hillsborough with?
Oh my gosh. So I always knew I wanted to go into the helping profession and make a difference. And I think that comes from just having a tough childhood. I find that us social workers tend to have stories. And so we want to pay it forward and help other people. And then because I'm not too shy, I have always gone to the front of the room, so to speak, and raised my hand for extra duty assignments here. And so I have always found myself in leadership roles, and that just kind of happened organically for me. Whether I was running behavioral healthcare companies or running a large delivery system for an insurance company. But, I've always gravitated towards mission driven work. And so later in my career, I went over to learn about end of life care and became the president and CEO of a very well known hospice in Las Vegas, Nathan Adelson Hospice, and just a wonderful organization. And I just kind of knew my time was up. I needed some freedom and flexibility. And so Hellsperian had offered me some opportunities to do some consulting for them, and that morphed into a wonderful role with them, not just as an advisor, but um, I serve as president of one of their larger accounts, the National Partnership for Healthcare and Hospice Innovation, which is just a wonderful organization. I think when I thread all that together, Pam, I think it's all been because I was never hesitant to say, yes, I'll try something new. And that has really served me well, that ability to say, okay, that might be uncomfortable, but yes, let me try that. And that's actually how the heck I got into the podcast. When I was asked to not just participate in the interview portion, but then to host it, I went, okay, I could try something new and take on a stretch assignment, as I like to say. Um, and so that has always served me well. But my North Star is always making sure that when I get up every day, that I'm playing my part to make the world a better place. Who can I help? How can I help?
Yes, I see. I mean, throughout what we this kind of just small chat, it seems to me that you are very purpose driven through your election of careers. And so if there is purpose on doing something, you'll probably give it a kind of a good shot. And I think
Mhm.
it's very important, especially in these careers, to, have that love and that passion, that sense of purpose of doing or helping, somebody to be able to achieve success. And what are your thoughts around, finding that purpose or exciting other people who are seeing us to, to look for that?
Well, I would love to think that everyone is looking for what makes them happy. And, that comes in all shapes and sizes. But I think it's really important that when we get up every day, we show up every day in a purposeful way. And that doesn't have to be social impact like I'm involved with. That can be uh, staying home and being a mom, which is
Or small business too.
right, or a small business. I mean, it comes in all shapes and sizes.
Mm.
But if we're not living purposeful lives, then we're really not being our best selves. And so that sounds so easy, but for me, it's been extremely challenging to stay true to myself in that. And so, you have girlfriends around that keep you honest and keep you in check. And I do. And I think that network of people are really important.
I think your thoughts on, like, always raising the hand and pushing forward, right? I mean, we as women have to push, forward in so many areas that we are not yet in. I'm thinking about places like tech, for example. We need bigger numbers of women because we just see it, tech is dominating our lives and it's male driven at the
Yeah.
moment. So yes, I just wanted to comment on that yes, if you make sure that you are pushing and raising your hand and getting there.
Let me just say though that that comes at a price, right? So no matter what you do, because I don't want to make it sound easy, it comes at a price. And so that price for me has been, some panic attacks. I mean, my most recent example would be the girlfriends. When we got done and it was getting released and we had done all the 9 episodes, Anna sends me an email that, everyone's so excited, this thing's going to take off and millions of people are going to hear my voice and hear my story. And I'm like, what do you mean millions of people? And Pam, I was down for the count for about a week. I could barely function. I was in tears. I didn't, I felt like I'm exposing myself and people are going to judge me and think ill of me. And so I just say all that because when we try new things, be prepared for the anxiety, whatever that might be. And it's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. In fact, that's when we have the best growth for ourselves personally and professionally. So I'm a big believer in that, although I don't always like those moments. I certainly didn't like the week prior to the girlfriend's release. But today I'm sitting here very satisfied with it because we've helped so many people. And I've I've my sharing of my story has empowered me to feel good about myself and let go of that shame and guilt and all that crappy stuff I was feeling.
It's usually that way, isn't it? If you get scared and you do it, and you're successful, you have progressed. And if you were not successful, you've learned something and you've also moved on with it. So it is important for all of us to look for that thing that challenges us. Um, you you always mention how can I say this? How out of the blue the idea of podcasting was. For you and I, and you kind of always jump over it, right? Like, you tried it, but what did it kind of take for you really to just venture into something like that?
Well, I'm sitting here with these headphones on now. I didn't even know what those were, right? I remember my daughter and son-in-law talking to me about podcasts for years. Mom, you should listen to this podcast about, XYZ. And I'm like looking at them like, what do you mean? A podcast that I listen to? I like to watch things on TV, right? More traditional. So when I did this podcast, it was completely out of my comfort zone in many respects, not just the equipment and how you're delivering a message, but then the storyline. I was reliving my past that I wasn't real excited about and learning about the trials and tribulations of other women that were, Gail's. And if you haven't listened to the podcast and you feel free, but, Gail, who was murdered and what her sister and friends and family went through. So there was a wide range of experiences for me doing the podcast. I would say to you, though, that I've learned that podcasts are a wonderful way to communicate, to bridge gaps, to bring people together. I'm
Mhm.
absolutely amazed by podcasting, and there's so many of them out there.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just a brilliant way to share story and feel connection.
One of the things around sharing stories or just speaking out is people tend to be very concerned is stigma.
Mm.
How do we break that barrier?
Yeah, so much to say about that. I really believe that we become the stories that we tell ourselves. And it's so important that we're kinder and nicer and let up on the stories uh, uh, so that we can help break through the stigmas and the barriers, if that makes sense. We can, I mean, I have this other voice in my head that lives with me 24/7 and speaks to me most often. And sometimes she's just not real kind. So I can get a little stuck in the stigmas and yeah. And so, how do we break free of that and continue to grow and develop? And I like to say today I want to be better than I was tomorrow, and that's kind of my mantra. But that comes with a great dedication and commitment to not getting caught up in conventional wisdom, not doing what everyone else is doing, and just being true to ourselves.
I love when you talk about kindness, about being kind to ourselves, especially to our past, especially in the area of relationships. You know, why you went out with somebody, why you didn't go out with somebody, right? Relationships in hindsight are a thing to be seen. And I think you're absolutely right, right? That we kind of create stories around them and that tend to be not very kind of why things worked or not work. And I think it's yeah, it's something that
Yeah.
affects all the other decisions of your life.
Yeah. And I'm grappling with it right now. So let me tell the world here that's listening to this as we celebrate International Women's Day. I've been married 3 times And I can't say I'm real proud of that. And I'm gonna get married again this year, and that I'm really grappling with that because there's a lot of shame I have with saying I've been married 4 times. Like, what am I thinking? Yet today I'm with this wonderful man who is just complements my life and completely. And let's see if I can get it right this time. But I am working through the stories in my head. Um, as I tell you about it and tell the world about it, that, that I have some stories that are associated with the mistakes I've made. And some of those marriages really weren't mistakes. They were just this part of my life as part of a season. And again, I don't live conventionally. So for me, marriage doesn't have to be forever per se. I do believe this fourth one will be, but if I look at things through a different lens, then I am kinder to myself with how I tell myself the story of my life.
I mean, first, congratulations for that. It's it and I want to talk about International Women's Day, and this is probably the kind of best segue is, you obviously are a seeker. You're probably fearless too for this what we're hearing in this conversation. Because how many people could say, I won't do that again, or I will stop, right? And that, affects your well-being.
Yeah.
And the person that you want, and you don't seem like you lost hope throughout this. And I think, yeah, many of us, many women do lose hope with life at some stage. So, I mean, congrats for that. And I and based on this, if there was a message that you could leave women who are hearing us on this day on what makes them kind of special, or what should move them on, what would that be?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. I think be kind to ourselves. And maybe something about look forward. What if we look forward to meeting our future selves? We spend so much time judging our younger selves and our past selves. What if we start to really pay attention of who we want to be tomorrow, who we want to be the next year, who we want to be in 5 years, and look forward to greeting her and meeting her and embracing her? I think that might be my new mantra right now.
I know that you do some kind of mentorship work and coaching work with women, and I would just imagine those sessions as amazing, because that kind of push is what, if the people need, career wise, personal, in all the areas that, make you be the special woman that you are. And for all of those that are out there hearing us, the bits that can make change. What is what is your vision for the future? How do you think we as women are doing, and how do you think that how do you think we're are moving the dial right now in
Yeah.
topics like gender equality or violence against women?
Look, I think we have a lot of work to do. I know we do. And I hope to be part of that solution. And may I tell you that I never thought women's issues was going to be kind of a platform for me, but I'm all in. I know that around 2.4 billion women of working age are not afforded equal economic opportunity, and 178 countries, I think, have barriers that prevent that full economic participation. That is just wrong. And I will do everything I can, like be here with you today, to right that wrong and to empower women and to make the world a better place in that area. We've got some work to do. Um, Only 3/4 of women have legal rights that are afforded to men. That is fundamentally wrong. And then if you look at this from a corporate perspective, women only represent about 25%, maybe slightly over that, of all corporate board seats. That's wrong too. So I'm here to say that it's time that we continue to move the needle. I'm not on to anything new. I know that's what you do each and every day, you and your team. are fighting for women's rights, and I applaud that. And I think each one of us have a responsibility to lift one another up and to make sure that our voices individually and collectively are heard.
That we're that kind of collective support system for each
A-
other.
Absolutely.
And I love when you say about raising your hand that you used to raise your hand, and that's the way. I think if many, 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 many more of us raised our hands, we'll be pushing in the right direction for gender equality.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we have to come together and just say yes. It's just time that we do that individually and collectively.
I think in using this moment also with young girls, right, that we can get to them easier. Because before you were, in a way, you were molded by the concepts that you were seeing at home and maybe at school and in church, right? There was not much more area of influence. But now, young girls are getting so much information from not so great places and from amazing places too, right? So just trying to, I think, from my perspective, move that dial also, and creating a stronger generation coming.
Yeah, when I look back, I didn't have a whole lot of female role models. They just weren't there. It was at a different time and place. And today, I think what I would ask is those of us in my shoes, my girlfriends that are my age, we have a responsibility to be there for younger women and to make sure that they understand, younger women understand not just what we went through, but that anything's possible with the right support, with the right mindset, with the right forgiveness of self for mistakes, and for making sure that the story that we tell ourselves is positive and upbeat, because anything is possible today.
Carol, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you so much for the incredible work at Girlfriends. It was I always say this, when we talk, but I have to repeat it. It was empowering for the team to hear a story, told like that. By a survivor, too. It came across extremely genuine, and I think it gives hope to not only to survivors but also to their support systems. There were people in that story that were not directly affected, but they were there, helping friends and so forth. So I just think, if we can help each other, and be a voice, then I think we're moving in the right direction. So thank you so much for being a icon for that, and that is why
Oh,
the series is so successful.
oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much. I have met some incredible people, and you are one of them. You just never cease to amaze me with your commitment to women and all that you do. And so it's wonderful to call you a friend and be in your world. And so that's a gift in itself. And your team's just simply amazing. So I love the women that support you and work with you. And I'm in awe. So it's a privilege to be here. And I can't thank you enough for considering me a friend. And let's just continue to grow our network of girlfriends and make sure that we're all stronger together.
Well, you're not only a friend, we're announcing soon. You're becoming a No More ambassador. So that is exciting for us, for the whole team, and there's more to come there.
I'm very excited and I'm honored and humbled, and oh my gosh, thank you so much for choosing me to be an ambassador. It's just
Mm.
that's a big deal. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's we need to go out, and take stories, and usually an ambassador for us is somebody who we just deeply admire, because of what they have done, and the way they keep on pushing forward, despite, and there'll be more announcements of people coming through, but despite the circumstance or how difficult sometimes it is to retell a story that affected, in your case, you and friends, in other cases, family members. It's yeah, it's it's what moves us forward. So we're happy with that. So thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you.